Recordings, and it says we are live.
Yay.
Yay.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where
Good,
you're
whatever
joining
it
us.
is for you.
We are back. I'm Deb Epstein of the Cosmic Dreaming Lodge, which is right behind me as I'm like whacking my camera around.
And I am Larissa Russell of Creative You. And I'm excited today. Deb and I were just talking, and we do this every time now. Like, we just get on and chat for a few minutes before we start. And just the synchronicities, things just brought to where they're supposed to be. And here we are. This happens to us, Deb, a lot, doesn't it? Where we have things that are just like, yep, that happened to me too. Yes, that's a thing for me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like divine timing.
Mm-hmm.
From stuff we had a conversation. I was going to say last week, but it was like the week before because I was traveling all last week. So we didn't get to connect, but we were talking about value and self-esteem and self-worth. And we pop in again today and like, whoop, we can pick up that thread and like all kinds of stuff's happening, right?
Yeah, it's so true. The things that happen, I mean, they need to, right? I mean, that's what, tapping into spirit, your intuition, the divine is all about, is getting those messages. And that's why when we decide we're going to do something, or we decide, something's happening in the world, it's like, of course, if we're paying attention, it's going to be happening to the people around us too, right? So yeah. It makes sense in different ways, of course, but it
absolutely right, because we're one energy, but we have that unique ability to create within that energy. And I think it's like where we're moving in our collective is really starting to understand that there is a rhythm to our creating. When we create egoically and it's misaligned with us for whatever the reason, that it has an impact on us and in our lives that we feel. And it could be that, like, why is this thing that I keep trying to do is never working out? And maybe it's just simply because you're trying to do something from a place that's not aligned with you and your soul and what you're here to really do. And it looks good from the outside, looking at, the outside looking in. It looks really cool. Everybody, all the kids are doing it, right?
Yep.
But it's just not for you. And sometimes it's really hard for us to get over and to get right with. That really what your soul wants is maybe something better that's more aligned, and it's going to feel better for you. But it may be that we're trying to not be that black sheep again.
Yet that is my lot in life, to be a black sheep.
And it's so funny because I go, like, the people that I talk to in my community, I know it's the same for you too. We attract the black sheep. So it's like, all right, wait a second. If we're all black sheep, then we're a community here. We're not on the outside looking in. We have our own unique community. And I see, as actually people are hopping in, I see we have 8 right now in the chat. So as you're hopping in, say hello, where you're from. Oh, hello, Mary. Look at all those beautiful emojis, peace and love and cool. Awesome. So yeah.
Say hello, say where you're from, and tell us about, maybe let's ask synchronicities. Have you seen that connection? Right? If we're all connected, we all have that thing that you've seen that connection, and maybe not with the community as a whole, but the community that you're a part of, right? Have you seen that connection? Because it's true, like, the world around me seems to be going the opposite direction, but the world within, the people that I know, the people I work with, we're all going in the same direction. Yeah. So
yeah. And there's such a beautiful, unique expression of that too. And one of the things I've been looking at is where do I disconnect? From that connection? Where do I feel overwhelmed with that connection? I'm classic introvert and hermit. I love my hermit time. What can I say? I love being alone. Because where I get to create and it's where I get to dream. And I love to daydream and, imagine all kinds of like possibilities and allow that wisdom to drop in. We need to have that time. A lot of creatives are that way, but it's interesting because we make that wrong. Or we devalue it, right? So going back into value, we devalue that. So if you guys have examples of how you feel about that, are you an introvert? And how are you seeing connection? How are you experiencing connection in your worlds? So we'll just keep chatting away as you get this, because I know there's a delay. So we'll be waiting for
Pop that in there.
For some chat.
It's what you just said about devaluing, right? Because it's so true. We were talking the other day about finishing projects, because in our very masculine energy world, we are told that we must produce something, right? We must finish it. It must be of value to other people. So just creating it is not enough value in our culture. And so people were in my group were talking about, projects that they haven't finished. And so I just put out the question, like, what happens if you don't finish it? Right? Well, I should because but why? Because someone told you should, because someone told you it's not valuable unless you do. But then if you finish it, what if it's not valued and then you need to sell it? And then what if you don't want to sell it? What if, and there's like all these things that adds value to it when the real value is in the creation of it.
Yeah.
And so if we can just let that go to allow ourselves to value the work we're doing as opposed to what, everyone else has deemed valuable in a very masculine energy world.
Yeah. Well, certainly we know that the imagination, which we all use, at all of us, whether you're an artist or a creative in some way, or you're an accountant, or an engineer, we all have an imagination that helps us create what we're creating. Some of us just are a little bit more tapped into it and are really utilizing it as a healing gift, shamanically and with our artwork and such. But there's such a devaluation of that too, because how many times has anyone in here, and I know I've heard it a lot, it's just your imagination. It's only in your imagination. It's not real. You're making it up. And it's always said in a derogatory way. And when we're talking about shifting into the new earth paradigm, where it requires us as artists to really imagine and dream how it could be different, you can see how immediately it puts the kibosh on that, right? We talk ourselves out of things all the time. And so when we're not finishing projects, is it because you can see the trajectory of that project once it's finished and it scares the bejesus out of you, and or is it simple? Is it just like a project that's going to take you a lot of time, and are you really committed to it? Or is it a stepping stone to something else? Because as you know too, like some projects, that's all there is to it. It doesn't have to come to completion. You've gotten what need to get out of it to make the next piece, or to do the next thing. Yeah. So you, as the creator, say when it's complete.
Yeah, not someone else, right?
Yeah.
Right? And that really is what value is about, because we have such a society of external value. And so as women, we're not valued externally. Creativity, all of the feminine energies are not valued, right? Our imagination, our self-care, intuition, all of those things are not valued in our very toxic masculine energy world. And again, I'm not saying men versus women, we're talking about energy. And we need a balance of the energies, but we've gone so far in one direction, we don't have a balance. And so we don't value those things that are so important for us to heal and to move forward. And why we're seeing so much trauma, pain, anger, hurt, because we're not putting the attention that we need to healing. We don't value it. We don't value healing. Yes, you must go and fix yourself, but we don't expect you to heal. We just want you to change what you're doing. Right? We don't. So it's a very interesting dynamic to be in. The expectations and the reality are very different. And so why do women not value themselves? Because we're not valued in our society. And that is really a big part of it. And Deb and I were talking before we turned the cameras on, and we were just talking about value and how, you get to a certain point and then like something else will come up and then it's like, what triggered that? Why, what's causing that now? And so I'm working through a little bit of a it's like, okay, what part of that has to do with how much I value myself, and what part of that is like working through that process? Is it stopping me, or is it the divine redirecting me? And I think often we think we're being stopped when really we're being redirected. I don't have the answer yet. So, we'll see soon.
Yeah. Stay tuned. Answers coming soon, right? We're working on it. Well, it's interesting. And it's one of the things I love about you is the vulnerability, how you lead as a transparent and vulnerable leader. And that is the new leadership. It is not being segregated and separated from everybody else in the community, that where I'm better, I've been through it, I know. That's really egoic. And the new way of connection with community, with yourself, seeing yourself as part of the whole, not above the whole or segregated from the whole or better than the whole, but part of. And being part of that is that we have these experiences. And when we talk about healing, I really, and I've been having this hard time with that word for a long time, because it's not a clear word. We have many different definitions individually of what that means. If I say that I want healing, do I want fixing? Or do I recognize that healing is a journey, but it's a self-similar pattern that we're transforming? So it's not a linear, I was here, I changed my behavior, and now I'm over here. Because as you and I both know, it's like, yes, you have a transformational shift, and then you're kind of cruising for a while. And then energies are always moving. Collective consciousness is always moving. There is no rest. The law of, it's motion, but I can't remember what the actual law says, but there's a law of vibration, a law of movement, that everything in the universe is constantly moving. Always. We're the only ones with the linear mind that can mark time and stop things. We can keep ourselves stuck in a moving river of energy. And that gets painful after a while. And especially if we tell the stories like, I should have been healed, or that I already did that, right? How many times have you yourself? Because I know I've done it too. Wow. Like, to me, I do it from a place of like, now I do it from a place of marveling, like, wow, like I know that I'm going to revisit this at some point in time. But it's like, you get a new depth, and you get a new depth because the energy is changing. It requires you to open up more fully. And there's, I don't know if I talked about this last time, but there's Benoit Mandelbrot, and he's I don't know if he's still alive or not, but he's a mathematician, and he came up with fractal geometry. And if you look it up, Mandelbrot fractals on YouTube, you'll see this pattern, and this pattern is a moving pattern, and it describes the universe. And if you start thinking of yourself as that pattern, every time you make a change, the pattern changes, but it's a self-similar pattern, and it keeps moving and it keeps changing. And sometimes it comes back to like, it looks like the original pattern, right? But then you keep changing it and changing it. So it doesn't mean like you're the hamster on the wheel, that you keep healing the same old thing. Why do I keep healing the same old thing? It's may feel that way at times, but if you look at what your life situation is and what you're in right now, you've created something for yourself to move into in a bigger way, to let go of another piece that is not fitting in to this new paradigm that you are creating for yourself on all kinds of levels. So healing.
Yes, and it's so true. And I think that's why, it's often compared to an onion, right? Like the layers, and then you're going deeper. I think of it like a ball of yarn, and you get to a knot, and then you have to stay there and unknot it for a while, and then you'll pull, and then all of a sudden there's another one, and it's really all the same but different, right? And that's what the healing journey is. It's not a one and done, as much as we might like it to be, because I've done that to myself as well. Oh, I thought I was done with this one. I thought I was done with this one, but it just shows up in a different way so that we can process it in a deeper way, right? Sometimes it'll come back the same way. Like, I feel like this thing that I'm going through right now very much came back as a, like, wow, I can't believe this is happening again in the exact same way almost. And I'm just like, okay, well, what do we have to learn from this one?
Yeah. What didn't I get in those other times?
Get the first time?
What did I miss? There's so much depth to the lessons in that, right? And I always ask this too, like we always talk about like, oh, there's a lesson in this, right? But like, can I get my lessons where they're fun? Can I learn like in a fun way, because like I'm kind of done with the really hard ass, like painful lessons. And that is up to us how we approach it, right? Because we can laugh about it. But there is also is it the tiger? What's the tiger? Healing the Tiger, healing with Peter Levine writes it. Can't think of the book.
I can see it. I can see the book, but
it's about healing trauma. It'll pop in later. It was so funny because I was about to say it and it just went away. So anyway, that he talks about exactly what you say. And he uses the example of this girl who keeps getting in plane crashes. And there was it was actually something a past life trauma that her subconscious kept throwing her into the situation so that she could create it differently. And that I like to look at, that's the lesson. I get different choices all the time. Am I choosing from not choosing, right? Which is my subconscious, or am I choosing with awareness, knowing that if I may not get it right every time, but I have possibility to choose differently for myself.
That was goosebumps right there. That was goosebumps right there, because I was just like, that's it. That is it. Because it's like, right. Because we always think, oh, well, we don't get to do this again. And it's like, oh, wait a second, I get to do this again. And what are my choices this time? And so, that's, I hadn't even thought about it that way. I just know that every time I go through something, as much as it's painful, I know that I have the capability to get through it. When I, years ago, as I was doing work, and it took a long time to realize that, oh yeah, it gets faster, it gets easier, it gets like you can see the light, right? So 20, 30, 40 years ago, I would be like, there is no light. And then now it's like, oh, I can actually see the light. I just need to work to get, to the brightness of it. And so I think that's a big part of what healing is. It's not being fixed. It's not being cured. It's a journey, and really allowing yourself the space to know that things will come back again, because you've healed it, or a part of it. But that doesn't mean it's fully, because maybe you looked at this one piece. The last time this situation happened, I focused on something that's no longer in my life. And now I realize that I didn't focus on the me part of this, right? I focused on how something else was affecting me. And so now I see it as, oh, okay, what's my part in this? What's my part to learn from this?
Yeah. How am I creating this? I ask that one a lot too. How am I creating this? You know, a lot of times I go, well, I'm not, it's just being created and I just happen to be a part of it. Right. But I'd love for that to be the truth and I don't have to own anything, but, but we're always creating, we're showing up and being a part of a grander creation. And it's, how am I showing up in this? And what am I creating in this? You know? Yeah, it's such an interesting thing to talk about, you know, healing and value and worthiness too, you know, that I'm not worthy to be healthy, or I'm not worthy to step into what I'm here to do as a soul until all of these other things line up, right? So making yourself wait to do what you're desiring to do, right? And there is a value issue in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we work through, you know, as we were saying, now I can't remember if we were saying that here beforehand, but we were talking about the external world and the internal, right? And so externally as women, we are not valued. I think I said it here. Yeah. And so that really plays a part in how we've shown up in this life, how we've shown up to work through things. I have shown up as a woman. I have shown up as a woman, you know, who would be considered a minority, part of the LGBTQ community. Yes, I'm a white woman, but so there's all these different aspects of being a woman. It's not just being a woman. And all of that plays into the value that is put upon us. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what value is put upon us, because unless we value ourselves, right? And so that's the journey that I've been on, is this. Yeah. And I think a lot of women have been.
Yeah. And I think there's a certain amount of empowerment when we can say what our value is and live into that despite what someone else thinks about that. And that, you know, there's a part of me that goes, well, that's just completely impossible and it's a bunch of bunk. But there's certain things I know to be true, you know, that we do create our own realities, and we create our realities not from the outside in, but from the inside out. And we draw to us those experiences that we're, when we shift our energy, you know, it doesn't mean that nothing will ever touch you, because we're living in a world it's not about that, right? Or you know, the way I look at it through my shamanic training is that we're forming a relationship with our soul, and the journey is always an inner journey, and it's the only one that matters. And we just happen to be on the road with a bunch of other people doing the same thing. Some of them are doing it, some of them are not. And, you know, we co-created all of this with, you know, whether we wanted it to or not. And it started long before we got here, you know, as this playing this part right now. It doesn't mean that I wasn't part of whatever got created before, you know, as a soul. We've, you know, whether you believe it or not, that I believe that we've been here. I have been here many different times. And sometimes I was on the good side of the coin and sometimes not, you know, and we get to like really see that, I don't want to say own, but acknowledge that we've played a lot of different parts.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely agree in that too. And I believe that we're here for a reason in this lifetime, right? And so what are those things that and so the more we force what we think we should be doing, as opposed to listening, you know, listening to the divine, listening to our intuition, the more we struggle with, and not to say you're not going to struggle, because that may be your journey, right? Everything plays out as it should, whether we like it or not. And we can fight it, which I often do, or
which is a choice, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And when is it, like, when you see yourself going on automatic, right? And why am I fighting with this? When you have that awareness, it's where you get to celebrate it, because you saw it. You saw that you were fighting it. So whether it changes right now or not, you can celebrate like, I saw myself struggle today, and it doesn't mean you have to fix it right away. And I think, we were talking a little bit about how our schooling, I don't know if I was talking to you or someone else, but our schooling is like, our training is to have the answer like that, right? And the shame that comes and the guilt as a result of the shame, because you didn't have it right away. You weren't doing your best. You're not being perfect or whatever that is. And I know for me, my personal journey through that was always feeling like that, walking on eggshells, like no matter what I do, it's going to be wrong.
Mhm.
It's, and then, when something doesn't work out the way I wanted it to, and I'm putting in big quotes.
I love the
right?
quotes. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what did I do wrong?
Mhm.
And it's not really like that. There is that part of me that still wants to ask it from that place. I must have done something wrong. Otherwise, it'd be working out exactly the way I wanted it to. But like, as we were talking, there's other questions I could be asking around too. Maybe rejection is protection, and this one's not for me,
Mhm.
or there's just something I needed to learn, right? And where we were talking about finishing a piece, right? Like
Mm.
the same thing. Like maybe I'm just not meant to finish this piece, or maybe I'm going to pick it up later, or maybe, there's lots of possibilities that we can play in. And I think that if we can stay in that play with our imagination of possibility, what else could it be? What else could it be? What else could it be? You're challenging your stories
Mhm.
of it's always this and it always stinks. I always get the broken one, right?
It's interesting you say that too, because I mean, I absolutely agree. And we were talking about finishing pieces. I'm going to just finish that sentence before I jump over to something else. But finishing pieces, and like, do we need to? And when is it finished? Who decides, right?
Mhm.
I was talking to my daughter and my granddaughter were here on the weekend, and my granddaughter said something to the effect of like, "Oh, I'm really bad at that," and I was like, "No, no, you're not. Like, if you keep telling yourself that, of course you're going to believe that, but
Mhm.
you're deciding that you're bad at it, which is making you bad at it." So we had this whole long conversation about that. She's 11,
Mhm.
right? She got some of it, but I think it made her think about the power of her words. And
Mhm.
so the more we can do that, and then caught my, 35-year-old daughter doing the same thing about something. And I was like, okay, which I also do the same thing. I'm not judging. I'm just saying. And then so we had the same conversation, and she's like, I know. She's like, I know that. And so I'm like, yeah, but then we need that reminder that we bring that energy to it. We're the ones that are deciding we're not good at it. And
Mhm.
yeah, my granddaughter was drawing. I can't draw. And I'm like, you're 11.
Yeah.
Like, you can draw just fine. For an 11-year-old, you do amazing.
Mhm.
Like, what are you comparing yourself to?
Mhm.
And we do this, right? We think we put the energy in that we can't do it, so then we don't.
Mhm.
And but also we're comparing ourselves against, I don't know, Instagram and all the things we see there.
Yeah. And then I go, okay, like, let's look at Picasso's work and let's look at Matisse's work, where their whole life and career was getting back to the simplicity of expressing from a childlike viewpoint,
Mhm.
on almost like unlearning all of the rules, and it has to look like this, and actually busting paradigms in art,
Mhm.
and did they get made fun of? I don't know about Picasso, but Matisse definitely got labeled as a wild beast with his color, right?
Mhm.
But he pushed, it's like artists that are daring to do that are pushing the envelope of what we call art. And who decides what we call art?
Yes. Who decides? Because like there's many times I'll go, through an art gallery, or all right, for instance, I have to do a little judgment thing because that's what I just have to. $12 million for a white canvas.
Mhm.
Sold it on the story, right? Not the canvas. But who decided that that was like worth $12 million, right? That's how we value things as money in our society. So if art must have value, who decided the white canvas would be valuable? Because I look at a white canvas and go, oh, I need to get started. Somebody else looks at it and goes, oh, it's finished.
It's art.
So,
Yeah.
and who gets to decide that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the art could be in the marketing of that.
Oh, it absolutely was. It was the story that told it, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So now we're moving art outside of the confines of it's a canvas, and that it's a canvas that has to have an image on it. And the image that's on it has to have these criteria. Well, that's really putting your imagination in a box, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to see how we'll judge ourselves, and yet who really decides? Right? Because we say we're not good enough, or we're not, all of those things. But then I'm an artist and I look at that and I go, I think that's ridiculous. That's me personally. Someone paid $12 million for it. They don't think that's ridiculous. So again, there's not even a consensus in what is valuable. We just know we're not valuable. What we do isn't valuable. And that's a story we tell ourselves.
Yeah. The not enough story. That's huge. That's really huge. And it holds a lot of us back from, what we really truly desire to do. And, it's the being seen, the artwork being seen, how do we value that? What value do I place on it? How do I ask for something, around my art that I value, and then do I even want to sell it? And that actually can, I think, go into why we don't finish pieces too, kind of looping back into that. Because what would happen if I finished that piece? Would I have to go sell it? Or is it going to go sit in a closet? And so wouldn't it be better just to not finish it? And it's almost like, if you look at it like birth, it's a miscarriage,
Yeah.
Or an abortion, which neither one is bad, but it's really like, where is your pain point in that? What's your level of pain in that?
What's the story you're telling yourself about it?
Yeah. Yeah. And are you creating more suffering because that's your value system? I don't deserve to have my artwork seen and get the, accolades, if that's what it is, or the recognition or the acknowledgement from the outside world, because I deserve to suffer.
Yeah.
So you can totally tie value into a lot of the things that we really desire to do that we're just not allowing ourselves to do. And it's really like up to us as individuals to really look at where am I, or what is my value? How do I value myself? And where do I see that creeping into all aspects of my life?
Yeah. And so if we, I was just seeing L.A. Paler, the person willing to pay decides if it's worth it. We don't have to judge our art on how much it will sell for, though. And that's exactly it, because it goes back to the comment at the beginning, is like, why do we even have to sell it? It's all in the creation. If we choose to sell it, great, but it's about the creation. But how do we value it? And we often value it based on how others value it. And that's the story we tell ourselves. And so changing that narrative, whether it's our creative works, well, it's all creative works, whether it's our paintings or our writing or our business, how we move through the world, what house we live in, the stories we tell ourselves will determine how we value ourselves. And that's very much in everything we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Determine or reveal too. If you're looking to see what it is, it will reveal your value system to you. And it's not that it's bad. It's just, is it working for you? Is it not working for you? Right. Because there's no problem if it's working for you.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're sitting in pain about something, like anguish about something, it's like, that's where we want to go in and take a look. about, it's not, why does this keep happening to me, but what am I doing, or how am I creating? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I putting out there without knowing I'm doing it? That's bringing this in for me to experience right now. And it's keeping, I think it's, if we can keep our language more in a neutral tone, where we're not blaming, shaming, or making ourselves a victim to our circumstances, that we just kind of neutralize. And I like see the power in that too, like, and the freedom. If we could just look at everything in our life as like, you're cleaning out a closet, like, don't use that anymore. Boom, that can go. Gonna keep that because I'm going to use that one day, where you can kind of assess your life that way. But I think we go into self-judgment a lot around that,
And if you think about it, because we've been talking about judgment a lot lately in my community, because judgment is required for safety, right? We judge a situation, we judge the people, we judge what's happening for safety. That's, our brain uses judgment for safety. But then we take it to the next level by feeding it, right? By feeding it from our experiences, by feeding it from what we've heard, been told, and how we've moved through the world. It no longer has anything to do with true safety, but we're judging based on value, how we value something, how our society values something, and we judge for that. And that is where we get caught, because then we start to judge our own selves as well, based on either that criteria or maybe a different criteria, but we're still turning the judgment on our own selves. And so if we could stop at the safety aspect, the true safety, am I going to die if I move forward? Imagine what would happen if we could then stop the judgment there. And because it would work for our own selves, as well as trying new things in the world and meeting new people, but also how we judge our own selves.
Yeah. And, I hear that too. And I think if we can come back to soul, where our wisdom resides, and come into the present moment, because what I heard in what you're sharing, you didn't say the words, but what I heard in there is we're recreating our past based on what we learned from our past experiences, right or wrong, good, bad, indifferent. And also, we also live in a world where there's a big amount of, I don't know if I can say half of us want to go into the past and stay there, the greatest generation, make America great again, right? Again. So it's like, what is it saying? That women go back into the kitchen because that's when it was great for the men, the men in power, the men in charge. It was easier for them, before we woke up and started, entering the workforce, and, all of that entailed too. And that we started stepping into our power. And, I don't know if I've shared that in here or not, but like when I talked to my mom, it's really interesting because she was a woman who went to work to help support our family, and she made more than my dad. But in terms of the work she was doing and the job that she held, she was not making what she should have been making for that position. She had men that were working underneath her that were making more money than her as the person in charge at the place she was working. And what she was told about that was, well, you're a second income. You're not the main support. The men here are the support system for their families. They need to get paid more. Who gets to decide that? Right? Like, how is that fair?
Yeah. It's still happening today. That's the scary part.
That's the scary part, right? But then at the same time, my mom has these stories that she tells, and the frustration about it. She herself still acts in accordance with that. I can't, because of, what your dad did or what your dad said or what your dad wants or whatever. He's in charge, even though he doesn't know what he's doing. and she's a lot smarter. He gets to make the decisions. And she learned that from my grandfather, because she hasn't put it together. I'm listening to it, putting it all together. I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? Where my grandfather made all the decisions financially for the household. He happened to be very good at it. And, they had not lots of money, but they did very well for themselves in the later years because he made good decisions. But now she's in that place where she's the girl, and she's in that, well, I'm a girl, I can't make financial decisions because that's the man's job. So we can get so hung up, in the paradigm, where it's almost like a sleep at the wheel sort of situation, where in one place you see the injustice of it and you're working to change it. But then in the other one, you're not even catching it. You're not even catching like the same issue and playing out in a different way,
Yeah. And again, this comes back to how we value ourselves based on how we're valued in society, right? And so the way we're valued then but plays a big part in how we value ourselves, because we have to step outside of the box to put value on ourselves, put value on what we do. And that is really uncomfortable. And that's where healing work comes from, right? And tapping into spirit to be able to do that. But we often don't even know we're doing it, right? Oh yeah, I'm a woman and I work and I get good pay and, do all these things, but I also do all the things at home, and I don't invest, and I don't, make as much. And so yes, we have all of these things, and we're talking collectively, not, an individual person per se, but we still don't, because of the energy behind it, because of how we're valued, it changes how we move in the world. Like how many men invest versus women, like it's astronomical difference, right? Because money is not what we're good at. We don't know money, and it's not important because the men will take care of it.
Yeah. I love how you're tying that into it, the not good at it. I'm not good at it. It's, it's like your granddaughter saying, I'm not good at this, and your daughter saying, I'm not good at that. Right. It's how do you even know? You've been told you're not good at it, so don't even try.
Yeah.
Because you're going to lose money, and money is life, right? Money is like support and survive, all our survival
it's
stuff.
just like being washed down the drain because you're not investing in it, and you're not,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's like switching that value. And then, okay, so you start to value yourselves and you start to do these things, but then you have all the pushback, right? You have all that pushback. I remember when my kids were little, and I was married to their dad, and he did housework because I was not going to be doing all the housework. I made that decision, and I was like, I'm not doing everything. I'm going to be working. You're working. I'm not doing it all. The pushback that I got from women about it was unbelievable to me. And to this day, I still hear comments about how horrible I was to him and like made him do these things. And I'm like, we both lived there. We both had kids. We both.
Why do I have to work harder? But I'm glad you're going here, because I do see that too, that like even within our group of women that I kind of see it as a crab in a bucket. It's like we're setting ourselves free. We're changing a paradigm, but it's like, it's too scary. So I got to pull you back down here. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to tell you you're doing it wrong, or, maybe even not that nice. I'm going to yell at you for it. I know you have too, gotten emails from our community. Like when you're doing something, it's almost like how dare you do this? I've gotten one recently. It's like, I'm getting off your list. How dare you, sell a program and, in this downed economy. And I'm kind of looking at it like, but that's what creates a downed economy. If I pull back now, if I stop being a business, which I'm a business, right? And I stop putting things out there to generate revenue, to generate sales, my company's going to fail, and I'm going to be part of a downed economy.
Mhm.
And so if I value myself and value my worth and value the work I do in the world, that also requires me to set a price on it so
Mhm.
that it pays, because I don't do these, and we don't do these things for free. It costs money
Mhm.
to do something that's free, right? That we put out there. All the back end stuff, the people that we hire to help us, because
Softwares, or our team, or
it's
all
it's
the
a
things.
lot. And so
Yeah.
I'm actually doing a disservice to those who I work with if I don't
Mhm.
try to generate sales during a downed economy. It doesn't matter what the economy is we're the ones that generate it. And it's only what we say it is anyway. That's the illusion
Mhm.
that we create. How do we know it's downturned? Really? How
Because
do we know?
we're
We're
told that it's
told.
downturned.
And then
Yeah.
we act accordingly.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
start to hold on to our money and we actually generate inflation because we're not spending, and businesses still have to create and generate an income to keep the infrastructure going.
Mhm. Yeah. And that is, I mean, the whole economy, we could get into a whole thing about that, right?
I know,
Because
what a can of worms.
yes, absolutely. But it comes back to value again, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So the person who calls you out for selling something in your business, and I've had these emails as well, um, doesn't value themselves and their worth, right?
Mhm.
And we could get into a whole, thing about the economy and how much money we have, and all of those things, and people
Yeah.
have money and people don't have money, but I believe that it ultimately comes down to how we value ourselves. And
Mhm.
so I do have struggles with money, and it's something I've been working on for years and years. I don't always do the wisest things. I don't um always, the energy is not always going in the right place, but overall most people would say I do quite well, right,
Mhm.
in life. But I recognize when I question my value, or when I really dig under, there's a reason why I haven't done as well as I could. And
Mhm.
it comes down to self-worth and
Mhm.
how much I value myself.
Yeah.
And yes, part of valuing myself is charging for what I do,
Mhm.
because that is valuing the work that I do. It is valuing the effort and the fact that I need to feed myself, and the fact that I need to have a roof over my head, and all of those things. And when we come from fear, which people often do when they troll like that, when they send emails or make comments on social media, whatever it is it comes from that place of fear. And I want to be empathetic, but also recognize the power that we give up when we do things like that, right?
Mhm.
Because I understand the situation of where you think you're at, but you've given up so much power, just as I have done, and I still do, right? I
Mhm.
still do it because the, and I'm not saying that people who are rich, because it comes with a whole other set of things.
Oh yeah.
Value
Yeah.
is like this whole spectrum thing, right? It's not like
Mhm.
you have money and you value yourself. No, it's a whole spectrum.
Yeah, because
But
it's a soul thing too. It's like, totally. I could tell some stories of some people I know that
yes,
still have problems, even though.
which then, as you know, I've been listening to, and so have you, the
Happy money
happy money.
and
Yes.
Honda. Yeah.
And so, like, and it's about the energy behind it, right? So you can
Mhm.
have money and still be stressed all the time and worried, and all of those things. And you can not have money and be stressed all the time and worried. Like,
Mhm.
what is the energy behind it? And I
Yeah.
think that's a big thing that we often forget about. And the more we value ourselves, the easier it is for the happy money to be a
Yeah.
part of our life, as opposed to the stressful money.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
often I know I see this in a lot of my clients. I'm broke. I don't have any money. I can't afford it. I don't. And yet, if you look at lifestyle and I'm not saying this is a judgment thing. We use these words because of how we value, right? And so is it ultimately true?
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that too, because you made me think of something. This has been coming up for me a lot too. The Big Leap by Gay Hendrick talks about not money, but time in the same way. And it's when we say, I don't have any time for this and I don't have any time for that. And we're the generators of money and time, and it's all energy, right? It's all energy. And so it's really, do you really want to say it that way? It could be true, right? And it also could be that I'm just choosing to allocate my funds in this way, and I'm choosing to not allocate over here. That's a lot more empowering than saying I'm broke, or I don't have the money, or I'm poor, I can't afford it, whatever. I mean, I can't tell you how much I heard growing up. I can't afford it yet. You know, my brother played hockey. I was a figure skater. We did all of these things. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I really started looking at it like, wait a minute. We were living with the story of I'm poor, we have nothing, but we're doing all this stuff. It's just where we were choosing to put the money. And that's, I think, where value comes in as well. Like when I value myself, I see where I choose. I can make choices instead of like, I'm a victim of everything.
Yeah. Which then comes down to owning your own power, right? Owning your own power, which is a struggle that we have, especially as women, is to own that power. And you're just going to talk to the comment that's there.
Yeah, I love that you're going there. Yeah, if your value comes from money, you never have enough. But that's another thing too, because we all have, I don't want to say we all have, because that's too, like, not everybody has this one, but a lot of people in my community that I run across it, because I have it too. So that's what I attract is people to work with that have that belief, I'm not enough. So even if, because we're using money as a metaphor basically here, even if you have enough money, you're still going to be saying, I don't have enough, and you're never going to get into gratitude. And so like, say things are really tight. And I think about myself as like, you know, in businesses that I've owned, you know, and having a practice where there's times where it's really slow. And maybe I have one or two clients. Instead of being in the conversation, it's not enough, right? And I also could be in the conversation where I'm grateful for what's coming into me, and I'm going to live in gratitude, because I also know that not only will things pick up, but everything counts. Everything has value to it, whether it's the money coming in or the food that gets put on your table, or the experiences that you choose to have, even going out and walking and connecting with nature. It all has a value. And if I don't value me in here, I'm not going to see the value of everything else around me. It's never going to be enough, because I'm not enough. And I live in a world that's just not enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what Ken was saying in the book as well, is that, you know, it's not about having more money. It's about how you feel about the money you have.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that shifts everything, because more money doesn't always solve all your problems. Well, it doesn't solve all your problems. It brings all new problems. Yes. Security, safety, things like that money can be very helpful for that, but it is not the be all and end all. You have money and life is rosy and wonderful. No, we wouldn't have Trumps of the world if that was the case, because he is not a happy man. You can tell he's not a happy man.
Right.
So he inflicts that on everyone. So it's like, obviously money doesn't solve everything.
Yeah. And he's playing a different game anyway, because it's like, there's another game. playing the power game. Right.
Yeah.
And it's, it's just really funny. Mary says, when I say I have no extra funds, it's true, no, an excuse. Well, I guess that's on an individual basis,
Mhm.
it's, if it's something I want to do, we all have that, right? Something I want to do, it costs X amount of money. I don't say, no, I don't have the money. I ask, where can I create it? How can I create it? I
Mhm.
think when we're, and it's different as an entrepreneur or when you work for yourself, because it feels like you're a little bit more in charge of what comes in, what,
Mhm.
and what goes out. When I was working for someone else, it is a limited thing. And then you do get to budget that, but is a story, because it's funny, because I can hear my coach saying right now, well, is it real or is it made up? Only if you're making it up and how you're telling the story. And what does she say? Oh no, that was it. I thought she said something else, but excuse, that's an interesting word. Yeah.
And I think because that's something that we often say in our society, right? That it's just an excuse, but it is the story that we tell ourselves. And yes, we only have X number of dollars, and yes, but what are we missing? So you may, I cannot afford to go to Rome this year. So because of choices that I've made, right? And I think about like when we talk about money, it's a really interesting thing. And I don't want to get into like personal stories about money, but the energy that goes behind it, we often say like, well, I only have this much, right? Like I own, and that could be physically true. I have this much, but then within that, we always have choices. We always have choices in what we do with that much, where we spend it, how we spend it. Often it might be the food and shelter, how we live. Do we live with somebody else? Do we not live with somebody else? Like we have choices in different things. But the story is the bigger part of it. It's not really about where we spend the money. It's what we're telling ourselves. I can't, I don't have enough. I lack. And it's like, what are you lacking? Really?
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm hearing that and I'm starting to chomp at the bit, because what I'm thinking of right now is different stories and things, and even, without getting into all the stories, where miracles can happen when we let go of the how, right? So say you're being called to Rome, right? And you're thinking, well, there's no way I can afford to go to Rome. I made choices that I can't, like, I just didn't leave room in the budget for a trip to Rome. But you really feel this draw, right? And then maybe your friend calls you and says, hey, I'm going to Rome. And I have this other ticket. Someone was going to go, they backed out. Do you want to come with me? Well, you just got a trip to Rome. Right. And I've heard of stories like that where things happen. I mean, something recently within my own family where someone gifted $1,200 to someone else, and it was a random sort of occurrence. And so I go, wow, I marvel at that stuff. So when we let go of this is the only way it can happen, and we open ourselves up to the bigger possibility that we are co-creating with everybody and that anything can happen, you are the holder of the vision. And when we get caught in the, I can't afford it, or I don't have enough, or I'm on a fixed income, and that's your story, that story becomes the energy that you're just putting out to the universe, and you're just getting that reflection back. And it does feel really real.
Oh,
And
yes,
I'm not going to say that it
absolutely.
doesn't. It is really real because we make it so real.
Mm-hmm.
But what's also real, what I know is true, is that it can come in so many unexpected and miraculous ways. And that when I get lodged into my story of this is the only way it can happen, is if me doing hard work, working to exhaustion, or not, or overcharging, or whatever, whatever the go-tos are.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I rely on only me to do it versus the universe that I co-create with, where
Yes.
the miracles happen.
That's where the miracles happen.
Yeah, I limit.
And being open to that allows them to happen. When we close ourselves off to it is when they don't happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but also being grateful, because
Yeah.
so many things happen that we don't even recognize are happening. And then we're still in that place of, lack, or I don't have enough, and it's like, but what about that you got? And what about this? And what about, and we don't recognize those things, because again, a lot of it comes from our external ideas about value.
Yeah. Yes.
We have to have paid a lot of money for it to have value.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if we could not have the money to pay a lot of money for it, is that trip to Rome any less valuable if someone gifts it to me or I pay for it myself?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so having that gratitude around what we do have can open the door to even more.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's actually what can help heal our not enoughness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big challenge too, because if it start looking at all the little things that come your way and see how you react with it. Just notice it, first of all. And without making yourself wrong or judging it, because we like to do that too.
Yeah.
Or pretending it's not there so I don't even have to go into that self beat up road. You just start to see how you react to it. And that's, isn't that interesting? Right. And that's that you get to congratulate yourself when you see I'm in my not enough story again, because, even the penny I found on the street, can I be grateful for that? Not, only a penny. What am I going to do with a penny?
Yeah. It's funny that you said that, because my granddaughter, who gets, I don't know, a couple of dollars a week for allowance, and she dropped a quarter, and she's like, oh, it's okay. And so I was like, no, why do you think that it's okay to just throw money away like that? And she's like, well, it's just a quarter. And I'm like, okay, yeah, and maybe somebody else needs it, but it's the thought that goes behind that. It doesn't have value. It's not enough. But I said, what if you had 4 quarters or 10 quarters? Right. And then so you start to see the value in having the little bits together, and it makes a difference. So we got to have a really amazing conversation about that, about this quarter that she dropped on the road, and was like, it's not important. And ultimately a quarter probably isn't important, but it's talking again about value and how we value things.
Mm-hmm.
And just because it's a piece as opposed to a whole doesn't make it any less valuable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's really interesting when we start to break it down like that. Can I find gratitude for those little things coming? And, I challenge myself and everyone listening right now to just see what happens when you start to be in gratitude for yourself, how you show up in the day, that you got up out of bed, right? Not that, the value coming from, I had to go to work, or I had to do this, or I had to do that to get value for yourself.
You are valuable.
You're valuable. I'm
value.
breathing, and that I'm grateful for that.
And that's what Mary just said. Yes, I've been lucky enough to have been gifted a few times. Right.
Yeah.
And all your positive emojis come back with that. And I love that.
I love all the emojis.
Yes. And it's so true. Right. And it's the energy that we put around it that changes that.
Yeah. And it really is. It all comes down to noticing where how we're telling the story, and what is it around, and then celebrating it, like, oh, I just caught myself. Cool. Because now I can shift it. I'm now in the place of choice, because with awareness comes choice. And that's also where our power comes in too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. And again, there we go. An hour, boom, gone. And it just amazes me doesn't amaze me, because we do this all the time. Have these amazing conversations. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. We had some people who absolutely consistently stayed through the whole thing, and I love that. So hopefully you got something from it. We are here usually every month, third Monday of the month. And plus, we've got some exciting things coming up in the near future. Deb and I have been working on some things in the background you'll be hearing about soon.
Mhm.
What's happening in your world right now? Because I know you've got something coming up.
Yeah, I'm working on a summit that's going to launch on the 15th. And yeah, that's it right now. I'm working on some other little things that I'm not ready to reveal yet,
Mhm.
but stay tuned. I'm sharing little snippets of one of my ongoing programs, the Cosmic Womb, which is going to be opening up for enrollment again in October. And I'm just including the conversation with my community. We're working on our multidimensional selves, So in order to be multidimensional, guess what we get to give up? Playing small.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I also have a summit coming up in September, Healing with Love,
Mhm.
which was kickstarted by some emails I received. So we're doing a Healing with Love summit in September. And so we will be sharing information about that as well. And then our Awakening program also opens in September for October. So yeah,
Mhm.
exciting new things. And LA Taylor, thank you for bringing up important subjects. Yes, we feel it's important. That's why we're here. What summit would that be
Is
during
that,
that joy?
oh yeah, the summit I'm doing is Cosmic Dreaming Revolution. And so it's a weekend summit. It's a 3-day summit where guess who is going to be part of the summit
I
guest
might be
speakers.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. But it's about empowerment and opening your voice and listening to your soul and creating a momentum to shift you into a revolution, because we can't make change until we start to revolt, and it gets to be inside. So it's really all about that. And I'm really excited. We've got some great guests on this summit and also some great practices to not just talk at you, but like give you something to expand
Yeah.
yourself with. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited about that. Thanks for asking.
Yes. And ours is going to be on the heel of yours a few days later,
Yep.
and Healing with Love. And we will be talking to a diverse group of individuals from all walks of life and talking about coming from a place of love and moving through the world with kindness. And then we also have some healing exercises that will be to help work through that and anything that might be holding you back from doing that. So yeah, super exciting stuff coming up. So thank you, Deb. I enjoy
Thank
talking to
you.
you. And
Thank
thank
you.
you
I
everyone for
enjoy it
being here.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And we will say goodbye for today.
Yep. See you in another month.